Today's podcast is brought to you by Blue Canary. The bird has landed on beautiful Bainbridge Island, conveniently located at 499 Madison Avenue. ASE Master Technician Clint Ramsey brings over 15 years of experience, award-winning diagnostic skill, and a desire to reinvent the automotive repair experience. Schedule an appointment online at bluecanary.biz or call them today at 206-451-4220.
I'm Maria Metzler, the Executive Director of Helpline House. The global pandemic has affected us all differently. If you or your neighbors need food assistance, mental health counseling, rental assistance, or Parks and Rec vouchers, please reach out. Helpline House can help in many ways. Find us on the web at helplinehouse.org. It's what we do. Neighbor helping neighbor.
I got something for your mind, body, and soul. I got something for your mind, body, and soul.
You have found the B.I.STANDER Podcast. Now here's your host with the most, Tiny Tim.
What's good, Podcastville? You've found the B.I.STANDER Podcast. Today's guest is Ron Peltier, North Ward City Council candidate. How are you today?
Fine. Thank you, Tim, for having me on.
Yeah, I want to apologize again for studio mess-ups on Friday and really value your time and appreciate you coming back a second time to have this discussion.
You bet. I'm glad to do it.
Good. Before we move into the future of City Council and such, I wanted to talk a little bit about the past. You definitely have a certain communication style that's different than most, and I was wondering why it's been difficult for some people to work with you on council, going back to Doug Schultz and Cole Medina, and just the kind of conflict that you had with those type of leaders.
Well, actually, I work quite well with my council colleagues. Excuse me, got a little frog there. For the first 2 years or so, we got a lot of things done. My style is to be maybe sometimes a little too honest, a little too transparent. And, you know, that's definitely something that, maybe I need to work on. I do tend to lean towards being more honest and open, and sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. I worked well with Cole and other folks, other council members. We got some really important stuff done the first about 2.5 years. So I don't think it's really fair to say that my communication style got in the way of getting things done. It did contribute to some of the later things that happened. There were some situations that if I knew then what I know now, I would have not allowed them to escalate as much as they did, or would have my part of them would have been to maybe be more restrained and disciplined in how I reacted to things.
Yeah, the one thing that I didn't quite understand is you worked with Cole, and Cole had mentioned this to me too, that you guys did get a lot done during the time, but he was kind of a little bit put off by all the public records requests. He felt, and I'm probably paraphrasing, I shouldn't speak for him, but from the outside in, it looked like you were searching for something.
Are you talking about after I was off city council?
Yeah, and Cole had left, or right about the same time that he left.
As a member of the public, I have a right to
absolutely.
Public records request, and there were some things that went on that I was concerned about, that I wanted to see what was going on, and so that's the purpose of the public records. I had many records requests filed against me, or not against me, but for records that my emails and that sort of thing. And I never complained about it. So,
well, what type of things were you looking for specifically?
I was looking for interactions between Cole and other council members, because I believe that some of the things he did before he left were improper. He tried to change, I felt, he was trying to change part of the ethics program to benefit himself. And the ethics board actually had a determination that he did do that, but it went to the hearing examiner, and the hearing examiner determined that there was not a violation. So the hearing examiner has the final say. I don't agree with his decision, but he has a final say, and that's part of Cole's due process, so I respect that.
And it seemed like accusations and ethics charges and the whole ethics board was on fire for a while. How would you describe how it transpired, how we didn't really have an ethics board and had an ethics board, then we realigned? I didn't follow it. It seemed like I was reading the Inquirer, if that, everything was a little surface level and not interesting to me to some extent, but it got talked about a lot on the island. Can you address it a little bit?
That's a very thoughtful question, Tim. One of the things that happened early on in late 2018 is that the city attorney decided that the ethics board could take third-party complaints regarding Article 1 core values. And those are not ethics. Those are core values. They're general aspirations, and their purpose up until that was to allow council members to request advisory opinions regarding something they may have done or thought they might do, and to get an opinion from the ethics board. There were people who lobbied for that to be subject to complaints, so that if somebody thought you were rude or not being civil or violating one of the core values, that they could file a complaint. And that really opened up, I believe, a Pandora's box of making the ethics program more political, because suddenly if somebody, I had one complaint filed against me, a person objected to the use of the phrase "with all due respect," and it was conveyed in an email, and I really didn't mean it disrespectful, but he took it as disrespectful, and that was unfortunate. And
how do you even take that disrespectful?
Well, he cited some websites that define that phrase as being sarcastic, and at times it can be used that way.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to read tone through an email, though.
It is. So that was unfortunate, and my style is I like to interact with people, and it's easy to forget you're an elected official, and what you say carries more weight at times. And I just like to interact with people, just like we're regular folks, and we can talk and we can be open, and that doesn't always work. Mm-hmm. And that's something I learned, is that I need to be more careful about how I interact and communicate with members of the public if I were elected again.
Do you ever feel like you come across vindictive at all?
I probably at times. I would venture that some people do, and especially if you feel like you've been mistreated or if people have been unfair. It's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say that if I ever come across that way, it's a good way to be or something I should do. I'm aware of my imperfections. And
that's the start, right?
We all have them.
Yes.
And some people are more willing to admit them than others. So I do have imperfections, and I hope I don't come across as vindictive very often, but that may have been the case at certain times.
Yeah, it seemed like the case when Doug went to Banning, and then you continued to talk about him.
Well,
I don't know. What got off with you two guys? Because when I first started the podcast, Doug was one of my first guests, and I didn't really know what's going on this island.
Again, that's a very thoughtful question. I think appropriate. Doug and I got it off to a bad start right after I was elected in 2015. He got a pay raise the day that Prop 1, which was the $15 million bond measure for a new police and court facility, failed, and he was the biggest proponent of that. And I objected to it. I wrote an email to the city council saying, I don't really think it's proper that you give him a raise. I don't think he deserves it. And he took offense to that, and he let me know about it. So it kind of tainted our working relationship. And I also thought that Doug at times was not as honest as he should be or transparent. And so there was some constant tension. We did manage to work together when I was deputy mayor, and even after that. when he came out with a newspaper interview where he called me a bully and criticized the council, I felt like he was stepping over a line.
Calling you out publicly, or?
Yeah, he called me out publicly, and it wasn't really indicative of the relationship that we'd had leading up to that, where we'd worked together on the landmark tree ordinance that he wrote, and he had consulted with me regularly for input on that. I was one of the 2 council members that attended a event he put on called For the Love of Bainbridge. So I was trying to be supportive of him and kind of try to turn over a new leaf, and then to be blamed for him leaving. It stung, and I probably overreacted to it. But I will say that I filed a complaint with his association, International City Managers Association, because I felt like he had violated their code of ethics. And there were some specific things in that code regarding city managers respecting the role of council members to make decisions and not to be political. And so that was one of the complaints I filed against him. So, that may be considered, vindictive. I didn't feel like it was at the time. And it wasn't. And I thought about it a lot because I knew that it could have an impact on him. But I really felt like he had violated part of his code. Some of the other things that happened were overblown. I've had people ask, did you follow Doug Schultz to California, investigate him? No, I didn't do that. I haven't been to California in about 40 years. There was a council member in Banning who contacted me and wanted to talk about some of the things that were going on with the police chief situation that actually involved our police chief as well. And I communicated with him about that issue. If I had it to do over again, I would not have communicated by email. I would have talked to him on the phone. So there's some stuff that I should have done differently that I've learned from. And
last one, and we'll get on to the issues that we care about, and that's stewardship of this island. I believe I remember some situation where most of the council had voted against you in some capacity, except perhaps the mayor, of not being a fit council member or something like that. What was that story about?
Well, there was nothing about being unfit to be a council member. It was a reprimand related to a complaint filed by the former city manager's wife. And she objected to the fact that I had communicated with the city council member from Banning, and claimed that my only purpose in doing that was to embarrass and discredit her and Doug. And that wasn't the case. She also accused me of promoting Facebook posts that were disparaging of Doug or unflattering, and claimed that I had communications with people in Banning about information regarding her and Doug. And that's not the case. I never did that. There's no proof that I did that. But we were in a very charged political atmosphere where the newspaper was reporting and sensationalizing all the complaints against me, and I would say inaccurately reporting what was going on and not really giving a balanced, there's usually more than one side to a story, and the local newspaper editor was really eager to give one side and to sensationalize it. So that's what I was reprimanded for, was supposedly somehow violating core values. It wasn't an ethics violation. It was related to things like respect and professionalism and that sort of thing. And they felt like my communications and the complaints I filed against Doug, they didn't approve. And the city council has a right to reprimand a member through their parliamentary procedure for any reason they want. So that's what they did. They didn't say it. Nobody said I was unfit to serve on the city council. They just didn't approve of what I had done.
Okay.
So that's what that was.
So I noticed you've taken out quite a few ads in that said paper. So you're giving them money, even though it's tough to give them money when they're the only paper in town.
Well, actually, my ads have mostly been in the Kitsap Sun, Bainbridge Islander.
Yeah, but they're all owned by the same people, right?
I don't know. Are they?
I believe
Kitsap and the
98110, the Islander, Kitsap, and some other. The Review. I think they're all by the same publisher.
Oh, really? Okay.
Anyway, I was noticing that you seem to be going hard body karate at your opponent, and kind of
hadn't heard that one.
Very aggressive. Like, this is what he doesn't do. This is what I do. What do they call that? A face-to-face political. I don't know the term.
Hard body karate. I guess I'll do it.
All right. Well, some people just like to say, this is what I can bring, and they don't acknowledge their opponent.
Yeah.
You seem to acknowledge your opponent quite a bit in the way you advertise.
Yeah.
What made you have that conscious choice to be a little bit different than all the other candidates on the city council?
Well, my opponent is why I'm running. If I thought that our city council...
Snap.
I thought if our city council were in good hands with my opponent, I would not have run. Because I don't have a burning desire to be on the city council, Tim. It's a lot of work.
Long meetings.
It takes up 4 years of your life. It dominates. When I was on the council last time, I missed one meeting in 4 years. So that's how seriously I take it. But, with my opponent, we have some different views or different positions we've staked out. He was for building 100 units of housing on the Suzuki property. And I don't know if he really understands the impact that would have had to the wildlife corridor there, the whole neighborhood, and just the feeling of the island.
Yeah. To
have that kind of urban density there. He supports the Winslow Hotel. I don't know that he understands the impact that would have with 727 additional car trips per day that could really transform Winslow.
I'd like to see the hotel next to the ferry in the parking lot, and put some greenery around it, but you just walk off the ferry and your hotel's there and there's less of a footprint.
I wonder if people would want... I've thought about that piece of property. One of the candidates, Kent Scott, is proposing... Well, I don't know if I should say this, but I think
Kent's a friend of the podcast. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he'd love to have a little forest planted there, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Huh.
Just plant a bunch of trees so that people come off the island. There's a nice little refuge, place to sequester carbon. So
look on the other side when we used to have the abandoned gas stations and such by the ravine there, and then we put in the sidewalk and the revisions there, and it cleaned up really nice. It's a very welcoming side of the sidewalk.
It is.
You get on the other side, there's the old police station and the old auto shop that's kind of abandoned, and it's not attractive.
And one of the things we did when I was on council, and I don't remember this before my opponent was on, he would have been supportive of this, was that we worked to retain as many trees as possible along that stretch there. And it took a little extra work, but we got our public works director to figure it out. So if I could return to why I'm running for council and my opponent and why I'm kind of, as you said, going hard body karate with my ads is I want people to know the difference. And one of the things concerns I have is that my opponent seems to be more of a politician than me. For him, I think it's really not so much about the issues. I think he's staked out positions where he knows he'll have support from certain people. For me, it's all about my personal philosophy and what I want to get done. It's not about any political ambition, and I don't think that's the same. I think we're different that way.
Fair. What do you think of this wintergreen project that they're talking about over there by ProBuild and Walgreens?
I've been an advocate for the city council to get involved in that, and not in a way that would intervene or what's the word that would
control the project, or
there's a process at the city, a land use review process. The design review board, the planning commission, hearing examiner, staff reviews and staff reports and all this stuff, and that has to be followed. So the city council can't subvert that legally, and I wouldn't want it to. But what I was hoping the city council would do would be to enter into a partnership as proposed by Councilwoman Nassar, now the mayor, a partnership with them to help advance their project. And part of the way to do that would be to become a financial partner so that there's some investment in the project and some incentive for the developers to work with the city and city council and to say, look, let's improve your project. Let's take a look at these recommendations by the design review board. Because they had a whole list of things. They wanted the project to have a natural landscape incorporated into it that would tie it to the buffers. There's a wetland buffer on one side. There's another buffer along the highway.
Isn't there artificial aquifers underneath that as well?
They have big tanks, Tim, and I watched as they installed these big.
Those were huge.
They made it like galvanized corrugated steel, and what they do is they store up stormwater, and then there's meters that release it gradually to mimic the natural hydrologic function on the site. So that's what I've advocated for, because I think that's an important project. It's that it's on a great location for affordable housing. It's near schools. Kids can walk to school from there.
Yeah, transit.
Transit's right
Ferry.
there. You've got the
STO trail.
You got the STO trail. You got a park across the street. You got all these stores where people can work or at least go to, do their banking and their shopping. I think it's an ideal location, and we're not going to get very many opportunities like that. So that's why I've supported it. I would like to see the project have maybe fewer units, because I think they're trying to squeeze too many on that site.
What's the count? 80 or something?
71.
71?
And have fewer, maybe 60 or whatever, something they can fit in there and still have the required buffer along the highway, and a little more space for people, like maybe a community garden, that sort of thing. So I'd like to see fewer units, and maybe more of them be deed restricted affordable. But I think it's a great location, and I hope a good version of that project happens.
And we're talking less than 2 acres, right? Thereabouts?
I don't know how many acres that is. That's one of those factoids I don't have at the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, we don't fact check here on the Bystander anyway, so.
You don't?
No. That's too much work. It's your story. Tell it how you like, Ron. You are one of the most outgoing stewards of the island and protecting water rights and trees and such. Where's your passion lie this second term going into city council? How do we maintain the growth? Is it a rezoning situation? Not maintain, but restrict the growth and highlight the water and the trees and the charm of rural, beautiful Bainbridge? Well,
one thing that the city has talked about, has had in its comp plan and actually on its work plan, is developing an effective transfer of development rights program. They call it a TDR program. They have one in King County that works really well to take development rights from more rural areas into centers and municipalities and that sort of thing. We can do the same thing on the island. It'd be actually simpler. And Councilwoman Carr has been one of the things she wanted to get done before she left, but she's only got about a month left.
Yeah, where's she going? Is she just walking off into the sunset or what?
She works in Seattle, and she really likes her job there as a planner. I think she'd be a great candidate for a new planning director at the city, so maybe we'll see her come back here.
Yeah, everything I've yet to make her acquaintance, but everything I hear about her is real positive.
Yeah, you might want to ask her if she'd like to come on sometime. She's very knowledgeable. They've been lucky to have her on the council. So our transfer development rights, also in terms of climate change, just focusing growth near our high-capacity transit center, the ferry. And then I would say the Wintergreen project is close enough to qualify for that. It's part of Vision 2050, the regional plan that's developed by Puget Sound Regional Council. And I was on the board when we worked on that. I won't say I had a major role in it, but I did have a little bit of influence regarding some policies on sewage and stormwater facilities. But one of their strategies is to focus growth near transit, so that theoretically people aren't driving as much.
Less carbon footprint.
Yeah, they're using the buses and the ferry and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of ridiculous when I see 100 cars at the schools, and we're like 11-mile island.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, and then we're complaining that we still don't have enough bus drivers, right?
I guess, yeah.
I like that the kids are out on their e-bikes, though. That's kind of fun.
E-bikes,
to see.
yeah. I'm big. I don't have an e-bike, and it always kind of bugs me when they pass me going up the hills. But I think the e-bikes, there's a big future in those, and that's one
for
reason
sure.
I would like to see us provide more shoulders along the roads, paved shoulders. I think we'll get more people out.
Yes,
on those
absolutely.
e-bikes.
I mean, we're considered a biking community, but we don't really have biking safety structure throughout the island. I mean, the Chili Hilly is a huge event. Some people really love it, and some have disdain for all the bikes on the ferry in the morning and how people just come onto the island and go right off. But this could be a destination bicycle spot,
Yeah.
and it could add to the tourism and such in a good way.
One of the things I've wanted to do at my property is to have one of the things I've thought about is have a little campsite for bikers. And we've actually had a couple of people, we'd see them riding, and they obviously are touring, and invite them if they want to camp in our yard. It's been kind of fun, hear their adventures.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I like how many bicyclists come and stay on the beach on Bainbridge and go see Bloedel and then go on to the Olympics from here. It's I've ran into quite a few people. And I love my e-bike. I will say that it is dangerous at times.
Oh, you have one? Okay.
Yeah, they're 75 pounds. So, if you crash that thing, take a tumble. I took quite a tumble off Eagle Harbor, going about 30 miles an hour after Thanksgiving. And
Oh, my God.
it was a tough wreck. But my friend Chuck, he has a touring bike, light as can be, and a stick or something went in the spokes of his bike, and he had to go to Harborview, and it was nasty. But that's a story for another day. We're here to talk about stewardship, quality of life, and what's going on the island. You are an advocate of water and water rights. How do you see the shoreline management shaping up, and are we in good shape with our aquifers and wells and water on the island?
That's a good question, Tim, and that's one of the reasons we need a really good groundwater management plan that requires more wells that are being tested and more transparency. It might be that we have enough water and that we're not in danger of depleting it, but there's some unknowns when it comes to aquifers. Somebody put it well the other day when they said everything's good until it isn't.
Right.
And
I see some of those pictures posted on Facebook about the brown water coming through the bathtubs and stuff like that.
And it could be just, something with a water system that's malfunctioning or needs to be maintained better. So I'm not saying that, yes, we definitely are depleting our aquifers, though I suspect that we probably are. But I just think we need a really good plan with great monitoring that's committed to long-term sustainability. And then we can feel a little more comfortable with the levels of growth that we're talking about.
Treaty rights to water. I know you're looking at kind of working with the tribe. How's that coming? What do we need to do to support the Native Americans, that this land that we are on?
That's a good question, Tim, and it does relate back to the groundwater management plan. And I have to say that I am encouraged by the direction the City Council is taking, because they've already started talking about the groundwater management plan. And one of the important policy elements is, are we going to maintain aquifer levels that will continue to support our streams and wetlands? And that is important to local tribes, that we have continued good stream flow into Puget Sound. Both for salmon and just for the health of the sound in general. That's I don't know if you read my response to questions to the Kitsap Sun that were published the other day, but I do see stewardship and protection of Puget Sound is one of our obligations to the local tribes. And they are our original people of color who have been marginalized, over since whites populated this area in the mid-1850s, and then the treaties were negotiated. So if we, when we talk about race equity, for me that's really important, that we don't continue to allow Puget Sound to be degraded from pollutants, from undertreated sewage, effluent, and stormwater, and degraded by reduced stream flows and that sort of thing. because the things they're entitled to harvest, the fish and the gooey ducks and salmon and clams.
And we want the orcas to have good supply of food as well.
Yeah.
Shoreline management. Well, let me back up. Aren't we kind of one of the biggest polluters with the runoff water from the streets going into the ocean, the sewage breaks, the farm salmon, and the Superfund and the ferry? I mean, I would think electrifying the ferry system would be a higher priority, because it seems like if it's dumping diesel into the bay there, or I don't know if it does or doesn't, there's got to be some type of impact to the water.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about any diesel spills, but
well, isn't there an offshoot of gas or diesel from the boat when it throttles down to come into port here?
Maybe just air emissions. You're talking about through their exhaust.
Yeah, I don't know how a ferry discharges its energy. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't think there are any intentional discharges of actual diesel, like into the water.
Right. But there's a fair amount of oil that leaks from our car that goes in the street and then goes into the water.
Yeah.
I would just think that such a large ship and so much trafficking in that bay would give off some type of pollutant. I mean, we've had red tide here for as long as I've been here. The Superfund site's been there as long as I've been here. Those seems like pollutants.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how much of the from the former creosote site is actually leaching into Puget Sound. It could be there are plumes that are going down that they're trying to prevent from going into the aquifers, and part of that was to mix concrete. One of the plans is to mix concrete into the ground to kind of encapsulate, encase the pollutants. As far as electrifying the ferries, electrification is an interesting topic because it can be shown that electric cars and electrification does have a return. It does have a cost, though, in terms of the rare earth metals that go into the batteries and that sort of thing. So it's an interesting discussion. Then we have to look at where we're getting our electricity, and right now, about a third of it comes from coal-fired plants in Montana. So I know that that's supposed to change over time, but I've got to ask, where is Puget Sound Energy going to get the energy to replace that? And at the same time, you have public utilities over in Eastern Washington providing electricity to these big server farms for things like blockchain. So, electrification, I'm not sure what we really get out of that, but I know a lot of people are big.
Those are fair questions. I think electric ferries might be a buzzword, because where's our charging station going to be? And, there are the mineral issues and such. I don't live on the shoreline. I don't understand the Shoreline Management Act. Much like the comprehensive plan, it seems to be evolving. Can you bring me up to snuff on the Shoreline Management Plan?
It was last approved. It's mandated by the Shoreline Management Act at the state level, and we have to have a periodic review and update, something like every 7 years.
And what does that constitute?
Well, it constitutes going through the Shoreline Master Program, which is about 400 pages long, and taking public comment, and then reviewing it and deciding if there's things that need to be updated, changed. And one of the biggest complaints, and I agree with it, is that it's too big. The one they have in Paulsbo, I think, is about 40 pages long. Now, I don't know if 40 pages is adequate for Bainbridge, but I think 400, what it does is it creates this huge document that's difficult for people to understand, and it's also difficult for staff to understand. So what happens is there's inconsistent applications of the rules that are in the SMP. So that's one of the things I would advocate for, is we need to make it smaller, perhaps start with a smaller one like the SMP that's just been approved for Kitsap County, and look at it and go, well, there are things in here that we don't like. Use it as a starting point. We want to add this, we want to add that, but come up with something shorter. And so I've proposed a process of having, if our council, I would advocate for an SMP ad hoc committee made up of some council members, some planning commission members, and some members of the public who have some expertise and maybe represent some diverse views as well. Mm-hmm. And take a look at, okay, what are the purposes? What's the purpose of the SMP? What are we trying to accomplish other than to meet state law because we're supposed to have a shoreline master program? And what problems are we trying to solve? And then create a matrix of what are the thorny issues that we're trying to address that are difficult. Things like, how do we define no net loss? And how are we going to apply something that's in there that's contentious is the precautionary principle. And that means that, when adverse impacts are unknown, you err on the side of preventing them. And a lot of shoreline owners don't like that because then staff can just deny a project or require
or add more projects and cost to the shoreline owner.
Yeah, they can add conditions just because, I'm taking a precautionary principle. That's a difficult one because I kind of agree with precautionary principle.
But it's also subject to a person's interpretation of that, right?
It leaves too much leeway.
Yeah.
So I'd like to look at how other jurisdictions are addressing that issue, and also the issue of no net loss. And there's other ones. Identify all these thorny issues. Look at how other jurisdictions have addressed them. Not that we have to do it exactly that way, but it could help inform how we, because other people have come up with some good solutions for these thorny issues, and we can learn from that. So that would be my approach, to have a committee that works on this for, I don't know if it takes a year, and work with members of the public and take the systematic approach, create a matrix, identify the difficult issues, what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to solve, and then make a recommendation to the city council.
Mm-hmm. All right. We talked a little bit about affordable housing and the Wintergreen project. How do you see the affordable housing issue here on the island?
I kind of see it a little bit in, island-centric, but also in terms of the region. And the region as a whole is experiencing issues with housing. I mean, someone could describe it as a housing crisis with people living in RVs and
tents
and under viaducts. And we don't have a big problem with that on the island now. I'm sure there are some homeless that aren't real obvious. But as a region and an island, the approach now is just we'd have to build a lot of housing. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that's going to solve the problem. I think it's got to be more targeted. And I think the state needs to step up and provide some incentives for affordable housing. Now, there are some incentives. Now, one that was recently approved by the City Council, a multifamily tax exemption. So if you create multifamily housing and a certain amount of it is affordable, you get a break on your property taxes. I'd like to see the state go further to give property tax breaks for people who have affordable rental that qualifies. And there's
how about a couch? Like
a couch?
Yeah. Couch surf at my house for $10 a night, and I'll take the tax break.
Okay, I'll let you propose that, Tim.
All right.
Give us the details on that, and if I get elected, we'll take a look at it.
All right.
But I think, and this is leading up to one of the things I'd like to see. One of the things I'd like to see the city council do, and that is to have a lobbyist for a state lobbyist. It goes to the legislature, and develop a legislative agenda, and that would include things regarding affordable housing, environmental protection. I like to see local jurisdictions have the legal authority to restrict the use of herbicides and pesticides, which we don't right now. So the state, I believe, needs to step up. Their property taxes are making Bainbridge Island are contributing to the lack of affordability. A lot of people,
yeah, even in senior housing, like. I have a house, and it was a certain amount when I bought it, and the taxes were reasonably affordable then.
Yeah.
And now it's tripled in value, and my taxes have tripled in value. So even though I'm further along in having complete equity in my home, my taxes are going up every year. And I saw the Kitsap County assessor out in the neighborhoods recently.
Yeah.
And I wanted to knock on the window and tell them everything wrong with my house. Because on the outside, it looks like, hey, it's worth a lot. You're in a great location. You're on Bainbridge. And I'm just like, bring those taxes down.
Yeah, and they love the state loves their, half your property taxes go to the state, something like that. And
then it becomes unaffordable. I don't need low-income housing, and I need affordable housing, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're making an honest living, or you're making a living like I am, you want to be able to keep what you have at a minimum.
Yeah. And it's I'm surprised that there isn't more of a revolt by taxpayers on the island after they, because recently the taxes were raised to pay for schools, which, is a good cause. I mean, it's something we need to do, but it's really impacted people who live on Bainbridge Island, other areas where the property values have gone up. And just a lot of people couldn't afford their houses now if they had to buy them again. Well,
you can just get off the rock across the bridge and your taxes drop in half almost. Just boom.
Oh, I hadn't done that comparison.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Suquamish and Kingston and Paulsbo, taxes are much less.
So if I could mention another idea I have about, and it's not necessarily my idea, but it's one that I've talked to people about, it has to do with senior housing. We have a lot of single-family houses that are fairly large, and some of them are lived in by older folks who really can't take care of them very well, and they don't really want to have the big yard and all that. They don't need all the space. I'd like to see us come up with a program where an owner or developer could take a single-family house and divide it into smaller units. It could be rented out, or it could be like a condominium with units that would be good for seniors, where they could have a small space. They could have a yard, but they wouldn't have to take care of the whole house. They could pay a certain amount that would cover all the maintenance of the property. So that's something I think we should be talking about and working on.
Also, when you talked about tax money going to the schools, the thing that drives me the most nuts in Washington state tax is the sin tax of marijuana, alcohol, cigarettes, lottery. When it first came out, it was an advertisement to support schools. And then I found out the money goes into the general fund and about 1% goes to the school. So they're profiting off all this bad behavior, and I think of it somewhat like Medicare. Like, we should really be concentrating on preventing a lot of these diseases as opposed to big pharma and the hospital crisis. It's like, hey, can everybody get a free gym membership? Can we all motivate ourselves a little bit? Can we all get out on a bike? Can we take the Couch to Fit November walking challenge? Whatever it is. I don't know. I just think that if we're going to put out the product of lottery, cigarettes, and alcohol for the betterment of our kids in school, I don't know. I don't like the premise, and I don't like the result. And then our property taxes here on Bainbridge Island seem to pay for almost everything. It's nuts to me.
Well, I've always been an opponent of the lottery because it encourages, a lot of people will just buy a ticket now and then, okay? But there are some people that spend a lot of money on lottery tickets. And some of them are people who are earning money for their household. And that takes away from their household. It's just this idea that I'm going to be a millionaire if I buy enough lottery tickets.
You got to be the Kellogg guy that figured out how to mathematically win the lottery.
I know people that claim they could use statistics to do that. And as far as I know, they haven't won the lottery yet.
Well, I know this one guy, he learned how to figure out the barcode on cereal boxes while he was working in the factory. And then he got a little deli. And then he started collecting wheat pennies from the change that he made. And he sold it. He collected the pennies until he had enough to install a lottery machine in his store. And then he started getting fascinated about, I think I can figure out the math on this. And he did, like 3 times.
Oh, he won the lottery, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Probability of statistics.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I guess some people made it work, huh?
Yeah, but go on, sorry.
Oh, I've kind of lost where I was at.
Well, we were lotterying it.
Oh, yeah, well. I'm a big proponent of, I think, our health system, and this isn't I don't know how much it applies to city council, though, that we spend a lot of money on healthcare in this country that could be prevented if people had more healthy lifestyles.
Yeah.
As far as diets, how to, regulating stress. There's a lot of stress.
Well, like whole food is 5 times as much as a shit burger at McDonald's, right? Like a bag of pistachios is $1.99 and a hamburger's $1.50 or something.
So, but there are a lot of foods that are healthy that just require you to have to cook for yourself.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can buy healthy food that somebody else prepares, and it's expensive.
Right.
At my house, we grow and eat a lot of our own dried beans and vegetables. Eat a lot of kale. We don't eat a lot of meat. We eat some fish, and a fair amount of dairy, but. There's ways to eat healthy and be economical, but you have to be resourceful. So I really believe in that. I really believe in getting physical exercise. It makes a big difference in your health. And it's in the long run, you're more productive, and it's less of a drain on society having to provide health care for people. So, and I think if we were healthier, the cost of health care would go down as well, because there's high demand and a limited supply.
And then Big Pharma wouldn't have as much control over environment and politics and stuff like that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're moving on here. Police station. What are your thoughts about the situation that we have ourselves in currently, and going forward, what would you like to see happen?
Well, I think, Tim, this is a real test of how well city government can function, and I'm concerned because I see us going. I don't know if things will come up like in your regular life, issues maybe with your spouse or friends or whatever, where they can be circular, where you discuss something so long that you come back to where you were, maybe a year ago or maybe 5 minutes ago. It depends on the situation.
Shout out to my wife. Sorry.
But I see the city doing that. Now we're revisiting whether the police station should go at Suzuki. And that was discussed, years ago, and determined it was too close to the schools to put a police and court facility there. But the institutional knowledge is such that if you go long enough with a discussion, you start going over things again. And a certain amount of that's okay. But I would like to see the city council make a decision on a police facility. And as a council member, if I were elected, I would not expect it to be the perfect solution. I don't particularly like the Harrison site for a police facility. I think it's not walkable from we could walk there from here, but it's not close to a lot of other amenities. So people are going to be driving there all the time, and it's not easily recognizable where it is by.
And there's only one way out.
One way out. Of course, the emergency exit is to drive across the church lawn. I don't know if you knew that. That's the emergency exit, and it's down like I said, it's a one-way down a gravel road. So for people who, say somebody wants to come to court for a restraining order, and we know that those can be dangerous situations for people, they have to walk down that road or call for the police to come and escort them or something. So that's not ideal. But having said all that, if a majority of the council, I was on the council, wanted to do that, I would say, look, let's just move forward with it. Let's make sure it's right size. Let's try and keep the budget down. But I would say one thing that needs to happen with the police budget is we need to get an independent consultant to come in, which hasn't happened in a long time, or I don't think maybe ever happened, to come in and take a look at Bainbridge Island and what our policing needs are. And tell us, are we spending the right amount on policing?
Yeah. I'd like to know how many tickets are written and how many crimes are conducted. When I first got here, there was the public access channel, and the one guy was reading the crime blog, once again, Tuesday night, 11 o'clock, somebody took Ron's mail. And it was about a 9-minute segment, and it just read it out of the review. But it was on TV.
Now, we used to have a public safety committee that I was on, where the police chief would come quarterly, and he'd have a report, like on all the crime or whatever had happened, the activities. And that's probably still available if you were to contact the police chief and ask him about it.
When it comes to the police chief, an open invite to you, and welcome to the neighborhood, I'd like to know who is serving my community. Like I think I was telling Kent Scott the other day that when I was a kid, the firemen used to pass out these like baseball cards, that were, here's Brian and his dog Fido, and he likes to mountain bike and hike, and there was a picture of him. And kids would trade and try to get all the policemen and firemen baseball cards. And then that was a way to bridge the gap of the unknown community members and to teach kids not to be afraid of police. And we went through the Chop and Chaz situation and then the defunding police cries and stuff like that. We have the turnover in a new police chief here on beautiful Bainbridge Island. I'd like to know and support the police, but I don't know who they are. So it's hard to put support in a faceless thing, I guess.
I think those are some good points, Tim. I've often wondered who the police are. I've met some of them. I did the police academy for council members just one day. Went to one event where I can't remember what it was. It was some awards event. It's really a good group of people
That's what I've heard.
Police department. It would be great if we knew them better. There is a little bit of a bunker mentality. I don't know if it's a little bit. There's a bunker mentality with the police. They feel like they have to kind of circle the wagons a little bit because they're the police, so they give out the tickets and stuff, and sometimes people don't like that, and they tend to not like the police, which is not really fair. But
they're trying to make it safer streets for us.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's have cards for the police and.
There used to be the National Day Out where the police gave hot dogs and stickers and balloons here on Bainbridge Island, downtown Winslow. Do you remember those? Yeah,
they probably haven't done them lately because of the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, I think they would continue doing that after things.
That'd be a good venue for them to do that.
Yeah.
So you think we should go ahead and start moving in on that project at the old Harrison Hospital building and get the courthouse and police station built?
I think we should move ahead on something soon. Find a consensus on the council, and I hope that's what's going to happen regardless of who gets elected.
But didn't we have a consensus when we bought the place in the first place?
Yeah, it was a 4-3 vote. There was a majority of council.
So why isn't it done deal? Let's go.
Well, that's up to the council. They decided they wanted to have a pause. There were some.
Oh, so you can vote and then decide not to do it? Even though you made that vote and we voted those people into city council to make these decisions?
Yeah, it's happened with other things. It happened with the bridge across the highway. Remember that?
Bridge to nowhere, yeah.
That whole thing. It was basically supported by a majority of council in 2017, and in 2018 a majority voted to cancel the project. So with the Harrison facility, one thing that's slowed it down is controversy about the purchase price. I think that there should be some accountability as to why real estate experts tell us that we spent about $5 million too much. Mm-hmm. I don't think that should slow down the process. We own the building. I know there's friends of mine who disagree with that. They want to slow the whole thing down until we have a full report on what happened. I think
we're not going to have a buyer at that price if we decide not to move forward with that building.
Yeah.
Who's going to buy it from the city?
I don't think anybody's going to pay that much, and I don't think anybody would have before. So it's a mistake that was made. It cost money. Maybe there should be some accountability, but I don't think it should slow down the process of moving forward. And for me, the first step would be, and I think the council should have already done this, is to get an independent assessment as to what our policing needs are. So we can be assured that what we've had planned for Harrison kind of fits that, and we're not overspending for police. Mm-hmm. I don't have a preconceived notion whether we are or not, but I know there is disagreement in the community about police spending.
Yeah, the analogy is that we have 3 brand new fire stations for less than we paid for that facility at Harrison.
Well, they spent more, but they got 3. Let's see. I know that they got in at a time when construction wasn't expensive, and they moved forward. Yeah, they got. I don't remember what the amount is that they spent, but it was.
Once again, we don't fact check.
It was reasonable. I won't throw anything out there.
Nice. All right, we should probably wind this up and get back to our day jobs. Climate control or climate change here. Do you have any? I know there's not really solutions, but ideas to help the climate. I mean, we bat back and forth the helium balloons and plastic bags, but that's like a pickleball match that I'm a little tired of. Can we think bigger, and what kind of things can we do as a community?
That is a good question, Tim. And right now, I think what we're doing is we're managing the anxiety around climate change by telling ourselves that we're doing something about it. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the 2 council members who proposed having a climate action plan in 2019. So I believe in that we should be doing what we can. But I don't see any signs that we're reducing our climate, our carbon emissions. Now, one thing I'm a big supporter of is non-motorized transportation. I like to see a lot more people buy e-bikes and get out on them because...
Yeah, I'd like to see the mobility levy return under better circumstances.
I was just talking to somebody about that the other night, that let's come up with a really good plan that people go, yeah, now that makes sense. We know how to...
Irresistible. Make it undeniable.
Yeah, I think that might be the way to... And I didn't mention this in the Squeaky Wheels forum the other night, but I
shout out to them. You put on a good forum.
Yeah, they did. And but I've thought about that some more, and that might be the way we need to go, is to put together a really good proposal for voters. And so that's something that will need to be developed. As far as actually reducing our carbon emissions, that's part of doing it. I think people also individually need to realize that what you do, when you take an airplane trip, that has a carbon impact. Mm-hmm. A long-haul trip has an impact equal to what somebody in a third world country has for a whole year in terms of carbon emissions. So a lot of this is individual, how we the things we buy, trips we take, our lifestyles. So there's, as far as climate, there's 2 things. There's mitigation, which is trying to reduce carbon emissions, and then there's adaptation. And I think we have to be thinking about how to better manage our forests, because we've seen catastrophic wildfires up and down. I mean, Oregon and California. We've gotten off a little bit easy. In Western Washington, we've had some fires, but it's getting drier, and the fuels are building up. So we need to be, and I'm not the first one to talk about this by any means. Other people have actually led on this. We need to have better forest management and encourage people to, to address some of the excess fuels that are built up and the kind of species that we're trying to encourage that are more drought resistant. Mm-hmm. So those are, climate change is here. I mean,
right.
I don't know if I grew up in this area. I never saw anything like these heat domes we had last summer.
Yeah, this summer was rough, and I hear this winter's going to be rough as well. And I just remember shucking oysters on the beach and clamming and, last 10 years, nothing, and eat crabbing too. I mean, Dungeness crab is my favorite food by far. I can eat my body weight in crab. Can't catch one for nothing anymore, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've really depleted.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I'm concerned because I see the sea life changing.
Yeah.
And then I go out there by Wing Point on the Spit, and you see these clams that look like footballs, like they're on steroids or something, just on the top. And I'm like, what? That's not a manila clam that's 5 pounds.
That's a cockle, I think you're saying.
Yeah, something like that. I'm just like, those are not
They're
edible,
by the way.
Are they?
Yeah.
I mean, shout out to Subi. The gooey duck yaki is one of my favorite appetizers for sure. So I can do the gooey duck. Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Ron Peltier for City Council in the North Ward. A reminder that this election, November 2nd, you're voting for all wards and all City Council and Parks Department players. Anything else you want to say to?
I just thank you, Tim, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm just really impressed how you conduct your interview today.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you again. You've been listening to Bystander. Be kind.